Chapter 470. Suddenly feeling that his dream of the future may become a reality, Doflamingo was also enraptured for a while. Even Dustless and the silent Hawkeye were forgotten by him. The whole world became his stage. In the world in front of him, there are very few people who can really see through fame and fortune. Not everyone is like Dustless, who can be as calm as water, pure of heart and few desires, to the extent that fame is nothing. All pirates want to be famous in the world and their names spread all over the world. Doflamingo is like this, and Hawkeye is no exception. If one day the world wants to take away his title of the world's greatest swordsman, he will bet all his dignity to defend his glory. It's still daytime, it's too early to go to bed, it's not time to dream. Raising his eyelids, Hawkeye ridiculed Doflamingo, who was immersed in his fantasy. His tone was as light as autumn water. Looking at the expressionless Dustless, Hawkeye was seriously observing the old drawings. Hawkeye was extremely puzzled. Doflamingo's ambition could swallow the heavens and swallow the earth. He didn't think that such a dangerous person was worth cooperating with. So that's how it is it for that? Hawkeye, who has excellent eyesight, saw the outline of the drawings in Dustless's hands at a glance. Although he doesn't understand the precise data, he knows the eye-catching big words Pluto. Ancient weapon design drawings. Dream? That's nonsense, Hawkeye. Doflamingo laughed wildly, his gloomy laughter spread, full of longing for the future. Fantasizing about the future in advance, how can it be a dream, a person without dreams? What's the difference between him and a salted fish? Too shallow, Hawkeye. After saying that, Doflamingo laughed even more savagely. His laughter was unbridled and unbridled. Everyone was just a spectator. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in your boring dreams. Hawkeye glanced at Doflamingo as lightly as a feather and said in a dull tone. There was no common ground between those who walked different paths. He and Doflamingo were never on the same path. It was only because of the existence of Dustless that he walked into the same trench as Doflamingo. That was all. Pedantic. Seeing that Hawkeye didn't understand the situation, Doflamingo also closed his mouth. He just joined this group, and both Hancock and Hawkeye faintly rejected him. The atmosphere became strangely silent. 3 pairs of eyes looked at Dustless in silence. Although Doflamingo was talkative, he and Hawkeye were not like-minded and could not speak together. As for the maid Hancock, it was even more impossible. Hawkeye and Doflamingo, go and find Caesar. Remember to do it cleanly. Kill everyone who has seen your faces. After a moment of silence, Dustless said coldly. The implication is nothing more than that, whether it is a marine or a pirate who sees their true faces, they will all be killed. Hearing this, Doflamingo and Hawkeye both nodded. The two of them were not indecisive people. Anyone who saw their faces would naturally die. After rescuing Caesar, where will he be placed? He is a famous mad scientist. Doflamingo asked expectantly, with a different meaning. He hoped that Doflamingo could sit on the throne of Dressrosa and arrange for Caesar to stay in Dressrosa. At that time, he would be able to fulfill his dream, and his crew, who were like family members, would be able to recuperate. Their days of being a fugitive at sea would also be over. It's too early. Like a heavy blow, Dustless did not hesitate to refuse Doflamingo. Doflamingo's mouth squirmed, and he intended to refute, but Dustless's face was cold, and the words that had been brewing in his throat for a long time were choked into his stomach. Thinking about it, Doflamingo felt relieved. It was impossible to directly ask Dressrosa's Liku royal family to leave, and the latter would obediently give up the throne and leave. The Liku royal family was loved and respected by the local people, and their support was very strong. The materials needed to build Pluton are huge. It's not too late to take Dressrosa after collecting all the materials. According to the degree of exaggeration of the design, the area of Pluton is as large as the island, and the various kinds of equipment needed can be imagined. The most important factor is that Dustless wants to wait until Doflamingo becomes a Shichibukai before occupying Dressrosa. In this way, he doesn't need to personally open the umbrella for Doflamingo. When attacking the impel down of the deep-sea prison, I have something for you, Dustless said with a hoarse smile. Suddenly there was a flash of inspiration in his mind. Dustless wrote a bunch of unflattering words and motioned to Hancock to wrap it with an envelope. Although puzzled, Hancock nodded seriously and walked towards the dark corridor. Hawkeye and Doflamingo were startled by this scene. They looked at Dustless with a dark smile on his face. They didn't need to think to know that this wasn't a good thing. Time is up, you go to rescue Caesar. Remember not to be recognized by others. Anyone who sees your true appearance will be killed without mercy. Waving his hand, Dustless suddenly ordered them to leave. Hawkeye and Doflamingo didn't talk nonsense. After looking at each other with tacit understanding, they also left the corridor where Hancock left. In the brightly lit room, there was only Dustless sitting alone. After the sound of shoes twisting disappeared completely, Dustless opened his eyes, no longer clear, full of puzzlement and confusion. Looking carefully at the design of Pluton in his hand, and after confirming it from head to toe, Dustless looked more gloomy, and there was a hint of killing intent. This is undoubtedly the design of Pluton, but the design in front of him was very different from what he expected, and even contrary to his original conjecture, and the content of the design subverted Dustless's cognition. But the most important factor was missing. Ah! Chapter 471. Carefully reading Pluton's blueprint, Dustless keenly realized that something was wrong. All kinds of data were not lacking, but one thing he cared about most was missing. The so-called surgeon fruit is not needed to start Pluton, which also indirectly shows that Pluton has nothing to do with the so-called Mariewa national treasure. It's really disappointing. After a moment of silence, Dustless sighed. He had been busy for a long time. Except for the ancient weapon blueprint, everything else was still the same. What is Doflamingo deliberately hiding? White Zetsu, who poked his head out, asked with a little disgust in his tone. Doflamingo gives people the feeling that he is an extremely evil existence. Others still pay attention to bottom lines and principles, but he has no bottom line in dealing with people. It's like wearing the coat of a demon. It's completely dark inside. As long as the benefits are enough, he can betray at any time. Impossible, I can see that this blueprint has not been tampered with, and he doesn't have the courage to lie to me. Shaking his head resolutely, Dustless can be 100% sure of the authenticity of the map. Since Doflamingo dared to come to the door so openly, it meant that his subordinates had investigated Dustless. At the very least, they knew Dustless's temperament. Doflamingo also knew what would happen if they tried to fool him with fake goods. To some extent, Dustless is more ferocious than the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Perhaps the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, did not dare to touch him because of Pluton's blueprint. If it was Dustless, this trick would not have any effect. Still quietly waiting for Caesar's news, standing up, the exhaustion spread all over his body. When he was about to go to bed, a supernatural energy fluctuation suddenly spread out. Caw caw caw, there was a violent vibration throughout Mariewa. Even hundreds of meters away from the center, Dustless could feel a heavy blow that tore the ground. Several energy fluctuations that were enough to crush the sky suddenly descended. The sleepy eyes were replaced by gloominess in an instant, and Dustless's eyes emitted a soul-stirring light. These dangerous breaths were all Haushiku Haki. Dustless tidied up his messy clothes and walked quickly to the balcony. The restless Haki has Doflamingo and Hawkeye. Could it be? Staring at the void that was torn to pieces in the distance, Dustless looked calm. Hawkeye and Doflamingo were obviously at a disadvantage, and it was self-evident who in Mariewa had reached this level of strength. Looking up, the void hundreds of miles ahead had been torn apart, and in the air, there was only a dark abyss, and the narrow and long cracks almost encompassed the entire Mariewa. The gigantic dark crack was large enough to devour everything in the world. The power that made one's heart palpitate lingered around it, as if an invisible hand was constantly pulling the surface area of the abyss. What do those 5 old men mean by this? Dustless's eyes flashed with killing intent. His entire body turned into resplendent light particles, and his original body disappeared. He turned into a straight beam of light and whizzed out. In the blink of an eye, his speed was so fast that it was hard for the naked eye to catch him. Hey! What do you 5 old men mean by this? On the sunken ground, Doflamingo was on guard against the 5 figures in front of him, and there was a little regret in his eyes, and he secretly scolded himself for being too reckless. Doflamingo, I should have made an agreement with you before. You're gambling with your life. The old man with the sword said with killing intent, and looking at his line of sight, the broken limbs were clearly visible, and there was almost no human appearance. However, it is not difficult to see from the fragments of these people's clothes and the air cover that has not burst yet. They are celestial dragons. Celestial dragons was his former identity, and now he is just a pirate who commits all kinds of crimes. A pirate is always a pirate, and his nature is always difficult to change. This time, we will kill him on the spot and save the celestial dragons from trouble. The 5 old men with blonde hair said with killing intent, and the oppression overflowing from his strong body was desperate. Caw caw caw, the clothes all over his body burst apart, revealing a strong body, and the regular abdominal muscles of his abdomen were clearly visible. Obviously, he and Garp are both strong people who have reached the limit of physical strength. This is bad. Hawkeye's heart fell to the bottom. These 5 people are not what he and Doflamingo can deal with. If the 5 of them come together, they may end the battle in just a few minutes. The scene gradually heated up, and both sides were just silent momentum. When the scene was about to go out of control, a cold voice stopped the outcome that was about to get out of control. There is no doubt that it is Dustless who came. 5, please give me an explanation. Golden photons converged from all directions, slowly condensed and compressed, and finally turned into a cold figure, staring at the 5 old men with a bad face, and the blame in his tone was undisguised. The 5 old men clearly knew that Hawkeye was their subordinate, but they still blocked him, making it clear that they wanted to slap him in the face. Explanation. You came at the right time. We also need an explanation from you, Louis South, Holy. Pointing to the dismembered body of the celestial dragon on the ground, the bald 5 old men who were most familiar with Dustless coldly asked, Doflamingo, this guy is too bold. Before entering the Holy Land, I had made 3 rules with him. This kid even dared to take an inch and take a mile. Who gave him the right to do so? The harsh words made the corner of Dustless's mouth twitch, and his face was gloomy. He looked at Hawkeye, and the latter nodded slightly, tacitly admitting that the 5 old men were telling the truth. Dustless, who wanted to punish the 5 old men, was particularly depressed. Ha! When I was in trouble, their family sent people to kill me. Now that the luck has changed, I will take the opportunity to teach them a little lesson. Shrugging his shoulders casually, Doflamingo replied indifferently, standing behind Dustless and said with a smile. The frivolous behavior of the villain made the 5 old men's killing intent even more intense. Chapter 472. Turning his head, revealing half of his face to look at Doflamingo, Dustless released his clenched fist, and the vigorous power accumulated in his body also dissipated. The broken limbs of the celestial dragons on the ground silently explained everything. All in all, they were in the wrong first. This kid is as cunning as a rabbit. Dustless couldn't help admiring in his heart. Doflamingo said that it was revenge, and it was indeed possible, but according to Dustless's guess, he wanted to test himself in disguise. He wanted to verify the relationship between the 5 elder stars and Dustless. Giving them a small lesson is to slaughter all of them. Son of a concubine, your so-called big lesson is really something to look forward to. Stepping forward, the 5 elder stars with a birthmark on his forehead asked with killing intent. He had warned Doflamingo not to act rashly before, but this kid was still so arrogant that he killed people in broad daylight. It was really hateful. The strange purple flames lingered behind him, and his whole person was shrouded in purple mist. Combined with his fierce face, even the arrogant Doflamingo instinctively moved behind Dustless. His movements were so subtle that they did not leave any traces. Everyone present had looks of disdain on their faces. The dead are gone, and the dead can't be resurrected. It's better to sit down and discuss how to deal with the aftermath. With a modest smile on the corner of his mouth, Dustless said softly with a bit of magnetism. It was also a disguised concession. Upon seeing this, the 5 honored stars looked at each other and could see the strangeness in each other's eyes. In their eyes, Wu Qin had always been the kind of person who was extremely strong and arrogant. Now, this kind of gentle and refined time to talk reason was rarely seen. Doflamingo's eyes flashed with a hidden color, and he looked at the 5 elder stars' every move. He was silent. He didn't expect Dustless's deterrence to be so great. If it weren't for the existence of Dustless, he would have been burned into nothingness by the strange purple flames. The 5 of you, please give me some face and let this matter pass. Dustless took in a deep breath of cold air and said calmly. His tender body stood in front of Hawkeye and Doflamingo. Among them, only Dustless was the shortest, and only his body was skinny. He looked the least authoritative, but in fact, it was the opposite. The faces of the 5 elder stars, however, froze, which was the complete opposite of their ungrateful attitude towards Hawkeye and Doflamingo. Lois South, Saint, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're that important. The 5 elder stars, who had long hair and beard and were extremely wise, shook their heads in denial. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. If anyone dares to trample on the law and justice, the world government will become air, and the law and order made by the 5 elder stars will also become a joke. They're already so old, yet they're still taking advantage of their seniority. What a bunch of cunning old men. Dustless's expression loosened as he cursed inwardly. The 5 of them in front of him were all old foxes who had been in the officialdom for many years. They were good at deceiving people. In the whole world, there were very few people who could compete with them. I can guarantee that the celestial dragons will not trouble you. The corner of his mouth raised a confident arc. After Dustless killed the celestial dragons last time, his notoriety had spread. Hearing this, the 5 elder stars were in a deadlock. It was undeniable that Dustless did have this ability. They looked at each other and could see the surprise in each other's eyes. They wanted to take this opportunity to kill Doflamingo, but they didn't expect Dustless to stand up for this pest. This guy, Doflamingo, was expressionless when he saw this, but his heart was furious. Countless blue veins on his forehead were surging and tumbling, and his sense of shame arose spontaneously. The 5 elder stars didn't put him in their eyes at all, but regarded him as a fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered, or simply a bargaining chip to threaten Dustless. This still won't work. The golden-haired 5 elder stars shook his head, and his silent momentum broke out again. A powerful wave of destruction broke out from his body. The other 4 were not careless, and their haki, which was majestic enough to crush the void, spread out unscrupulously. This is what you asked for. Seeing this, Dustless just sneered again and again, his deep pupils turned into scarlet eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and the dark blue substantialized evil chakra was ready to go, like a god or a demon. Decaying, the aura unique to the wild broke out of his body, covering the void, and the dark blue light covered the entire Mariewa, making people unable to put up the slightest resistance. The hazy dark blue shadow suddenly descended, and as the mysterious energy fluctuations hidden in Dustless's body continued to erupt, the shadow became more and more solid. The giant, which was 500 or 600 feet high, was looming, and as long as Dustless gave the order, the ferocious giant would become real. So high! The bald 5 elder stars holding the sword was shocked, and his eyes were full of shock. For the first time in many years, ripples appeared in his heart, which was calm like an ancient well, and he was shrouded by the evil wave, and his soul trembled. Even his body trembled uncontrollably. The giant's eyes made him feel powerless, and the ancient long sword at his waist was filled with an indescribable force. Before it was out of his body, the panic of all things being destroyed spread over all creatures. So I should be qualified, right? Dustless asked with a playful smile on the corner of his mouth. The 5 elder stars' faces all changed when they heard this, and their fists were sweating, but they did not dare to do anything. In the world where the strong are respected, the words and deeds of the people with bigger fists are the reason and order. Does Louis South, Saint, really want to fight to the death? That won't do any good to either side. The white-haired 5 elder stars frowned and said in a deep voice. There was a hint of helplessness in his tone. The 5 of them had joined forces. They were confident that they could use their secret move to drag Wu Qin to hell. However, the price they had to pay was also difficult to bear. All in all, the result of fighting is to kill 1,000 of the enemy and lose 800 of their own. They will also be injured, and it will be too late to extend their lives. How can they dislike that their lives are too long? I naturally know that it's not good to do this, but I just think it's better this way. You're right. Chapter 473. If possible, Dustless didn't want to cause more trouble, but these 5 old men seemed to be used to being high and mighty. They had developed a bad habit of bossing people around. Spoiling them would only lead to enmity. Caw caw caw, the sound of bones combining sounded. The crackling sound was particularly pleasant to the ears. The giant shadow became more solid, and the majestic oppression became more intense. The 5 honored stars' hearts were gloomy and dead silent. Looking up, they saw many solid bones in the dark blue shadow. The monster with 2 heads and 4 arms could be clearly seen. It ends here. The 5 honored stars, who had a head full of white curly hair, wore a flat hat, and had a scar on the left side of his face, made the final decision. Obviously, he didn't want to shed all pretense of cordiality with Dustless over such a low-class character like Doflamingo. In the end, we're all family. His cold gaze was somewhat restrained. When it swept across Doflamingo, it flashed with a touch of disdain. The silent mockery seemed to be saying that a lackey would always be a lackey and would never amount to anything. Doflamingo's face was full of indifference. He looked at him with a sinister smile, completely fearless. It's indeed not worth making a big fuss over an ant. Casually glancing at Doflamingo, the 5 honored stars left one after another. In their hearts, they were already very certain that Dustless had stood up to protect Doflamingo at the crucial moment because Pluto's blueprint had fallen into his hands. Otherwise, with Dustless's status and strength, there was absolutely no possibility of him saving him. It's indeed not worth it for both sides to suffer. Louis South, Saint, is still a member of our government. We can't do stupid things like killing each other. But we can be sure that Pluto's design blueprint has fallen into his hands. The 5 honored stars with long hair and beard analyzed wisely. His eyes were deep and shining. One wouldn't get up early if there were no benefits. Human nature was so greedy for benefits. This was an eternal and unchanging law. Only Pluto's design blueprint could move Dustless. In this case, we should snatch it even more. The 5 honored stars with a birthmark on their foreheads said with a hoarse voice, with longing and longing. As the highest authority in the world, they knew better than anyone else how terrifying the Netherworld King was. He was a true world-destroying divine weapon, many times more powerful than the so-called kinetic rock. Flattening an island was a piece of cake. Using this artifact to crush the rule of the celestial dragons, and then they would establish themselves as kings and establish a new order of ruler of the people. The whole world would be sublimated, and it would be the happiness of the world's people. That's for sure. However, it's still too early. Right now, it's just a tattered blueprint. The best time for us to make our move will be when it's out in the open. The 5 honored stars with the scar on their foreheads laughed sinisterly. Even if the Pluton King blueprint fell into their hands now, it would be meaningless. It would take them 10 to 20 years to build it. Dustless built it first, and in the end, they would reap the benefits. Then, they would drive Dustless's Hades and destroy him. Nothing could be more ironic. There was absolutely no need to engage in a meaningless fight to the death, especially if they were unable to obtain victory in the end. Instead, they would end up with heavy injuries or even death. The Marine doesn't seem to agree with our proposal. With a sudden turn of the conversation, the bold Gorosei brought the problem back to the Marine headquarters and sighed helplessly. Almost all of them showed their opposition. The Shichibukai plan is still too early to be introduced. The Marine and the pirates are natural enemies. There is no possibility of cooperation between the two. The fierce rebound of the Marine is also within their expectations. So what, they are useless. The blonde Gorosei sneered. It was the government who drew up the plan. In the final analysis, it was because the Marine was too useless. They could drive side by side with the pirates, and there was no need to make such a ridiculous plan as Shichibukai. After all, this is tantamount to slapping their own face. The world government is dressed in the cloak of justice, but it also gives pirates the power to loot legally. The sense of support is bound to decline. They don't want to use such a plan that hurts others and hurts themselves. It's no different from digging their own grave. The reason why the plan of Shichibukai was drawn from Dustless and Hawkeye. It was the most effective and direct way to suppress pirates with the power of pirates. It's really difficult to get them to join forces. The Gorosei nodded thoughtfully. The pirates were easy to say, but the Marine was full of complaints. Their former teammates fell under the pirates' bayonet. It's human nature to not accept it. That's not up to the warring states. The plan of Shichibukai is imperative. On the Blue Sea, the Don Quixote pirates moved slowly, their speed was quite slow, and they looked leisurely, not at all anxious to escape. Young master, that guy. Inside the cabin, Treble looked worriedly at Doflamingo, who had a relaxed and calm expression on his face. After glancing at Hawkeye outside the cabin, he thought about the route they were sailing on. His head felt like it was made of glue, and the sky turned dark. Hawkeye used to have an old hatred with them, and now he has become a close partner. Even if his nerves are jumping, he can't keep up with the incredible scene in front of him. Deep sea prison, impel down, it's no different from dying directly. There's no need to worry, with that man, impel down is a fat lamb outside the sheep pen. Squinting his eyes, Doflamingo's eyes emitted a dangerous light. The light of the tiger and the wolf is enough to devour everything. Now temporarily submitting to Dustless is just a prelude to a great future. Caesar is an indispensable fatal link. Even if it's not for the temporary boss Dustless, he must take the ultimate chess piece of Caesar Kalong for himself in the future. Opening the window, looking at the heavily guarded island in the distance, Doflamingo's wild and unruly laughter rang out. Let's flatten impel down. Chapter 474. Deep Sea Prison, Impel Down. There are countless big pirates imprisoned here. Some disappeared and became legendary big pirates. They are all imprisoned here and live a dark life. To some extent, Impel Down is a hell on earth isolated from the world. People who enter here want to come out alive. Except for Golden Lion Shiki, it is impossible for others. The current chief guard, Magellan, was a Paramecia poisonous fruit ability user. Because he was a poisonous man, the breath he exhaled was poisonous, and the food that reached his mouth would also be poisoned, unintentionally. Therefore, every time the poison was too strong, his body would not be able to withstand it, causing diarrhea, but he would not die. This also causes him to spend most of the day in the toilet. The fruit ability is strong, but the side effects are also ridiculous. In the dark environment, Magellan, who had just washed his hands, laughed bitterly at himself. Other devil fruits have side effects, but his poisonous fruit is an exception. The exhalation is poisonous, and the food in his mouth is poisonous. He has diarrhea for at least 10 hours every day. Gulp, the stomach that had been empty for a long time immediately revolted, and the hunger rose uncontrollably. He quickened his pace and was about to go back to eat and drink. The sudden loud noise made his mind stop thinking. Boom, 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 the walls of the deep-sea prison, which were made of special materials and extremely hard, collapsed and turned into rubble and debris. The dark green light easily penetrated a huge hole in the wall. It should have been a dark prison, but a warm ray of dawn shone in. Magellan, who has been active in the dark for many years, was unusually uncomfortable. He turned his head, and the dazzling sun made him instinctively stretch out his rough old hands in front of his eyes. Through the small gap between the 5 fingers, several figures could be vaguely seen. Who is it? These mysterious people who suddenly appeared made Magellan nervous, and the heavy coat covered the body, and it was impossible to identify their specific appearance. Even so, the vigorous breath and the previous slash made Magellan feel a fatal threat. It can be concluded that the group of people who came from the sky in front of him are all masters. Who is it? TSK. Has the constant diarrhea drained your brain? Invading Impel Down is of course to rob the prisoners. Without waiting for Magellan to react, several transparent lines that could not be captured by the naked eye whizzed out like cannonballs. The purpose was exactly the same as the bullets. The target was Magellan. Ordinary people couldn't catch these thin lines, but Magellan, one of the 2 strongest men in the deep-sea prison, could sense them clearly. Ability user. What sharp lines! Seeing this, Magellan did not dare to be careless. The other party had the advantage in numbers. For the sake of caution, he still chose to jump and avoid the attack of these thin lines. Bang, 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 a series of explosions followed. The sturdy walls that made up the deep-sea prison were extremely fragile. They burst open, and fist-sized holes appeared. Dust scattered in all directions, and the ground was also covered with dust. There is no doubt that the group of people who invaded Impel Down was Hawkeye and the Don Quixote pirates. Go and search every house. Find that man, Caesar, even if you have to dig 10 feet into the ground. Doflamingo, who was wearing a heavy coat, ordered. He had a deep obsession with Caesar. The members of the Don Quixote pirates nodded and then walked towards the promenade deep in the prison. Want to rescue the prisoners? It's best that you die here in peace. Seeing that the big man in the cotton-padded coat ignored his existence, Magellan's killing intent was awe-inspiring. Purple liquid flowed out of his back, and there was a strange boiling gas. The venom was compressed and formed into 3 terrible venom dragons. In the blink of an eye, the venom dragons swayed their bodies unscrupulously, and anything that touched them would be eroded and decayed. So that's how it is. I didn't expect Impel Down to hide such an extraordinary character. The Marines are really talented. A slightly surprised sigh sounded, and then the green light suddenly shone brightly. A tyrannical slash came out, and the ground was pulled into a bottomless crack as if it was cutting vegetables. This chop. Bastard, what is your purpose in invading Impel Down? Perceiving the strength of the emerald light, Magellan's face changed, and an angry roar accompanied by a strange red light spread, and a substantial giant composed entirely of red toxins was suddenly formed. Poisonous giant soldier Hell's Judgment. The mysterious enemies in front of him are strong beyond imagination. At present, Impel Down is temporarily closed, and there is no one who can surpass them. Including the prison director who has been in office for a short time. In the face of this overbearing and unparalleled chop, he smelled a strong smell of death. It seems that you have guessed our identity. In that case, I can only let you close your eyes forever. Unlike Impel Down, Dustless, who was far away in Mariewa, was idle, lazily leaning on the sofa, leisurely tasting afternoon tea. The Marines won't bother you for at least the next few years, but they still have to hide. Although I'm sorry for you, according to the current situation, they can only develop like this. After a long silence, Dustless said. Looking around, there was no one in the spacious and bright room. I understand this, I have adapted to this life of desperation. In the dark corner, a young but strong voice came out. The tone did not match the age, but with an indescribable vicissitudes of life. Following the sound, there was a depressing darkness, and only the outline of a young child could be vaguely observed. From this clear and melodious voice, it was easy to tell that the person who spoke was a young girl. Chapter 475. The dark space covered the girl's face like an invisible coat. Under the observation of Dustless's abnormal visual ability, the peerless face was still reflected in the dark eyes. Maybe you were born with this fate. After a moment of silence, a complicated look flashed in his eyes. Dustless sighed with mixed feelings. The bumpy experience of the little girl in front of him was so similar to his past. His body moved and quietly fell beside the lovely girl. After carefully observing her for a long time, Dustless's casual thoughts turned into substantial action. Dustless's closed eyes opened, no longer the previous dark eyes, turned into scarlet five-pointed star eyes. With a slightly pale and indifferent face, there was no difference between him and the Grim Reaper who stepped out of hell. There was even a faint blood mist drifting behind him, which was breathtaking. The little girl's deep eyes instinctively flashed with panic, and she subconsciously stepped back until she was squeezed into the corner and couldn't retreat anymore. Then her panicked steps stopped. Don't be afraid, I'm not as terrible as you think. There is a gap between celestial dragons and Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Seeing this, Dustless with a gloomy face showed a kind smile. His gentle face warmed people's hearts. It seemed neither fish nor fowl, but it came from his heart. In fact, Dustless is not as terrible and indifferent as imagined. The premise of all this is not to touch his bottom line. Of course, touching his bottom line is another matter. Those who dare to challenge his bottom line, Dustless will naturally tear them into pieces. The little girl slightly nodded, her isolated heart was loosened, and she walked in front of Dustless. This is called Mangekyo Sharingan. It's one of my countless abilities. It can be regarded as my specialty. Raising his hand and pointing to his eye socket, Dustless softly introduced. Then squatting down, the two of them maintained the same height. After staring at her for a moment, he said, after completing the task for me, you can get your own reward and freedom. Like a normal human, you can easily bathe in the sun under the bright sky. You don't have to live a dark life. He looked directly at the little girl, and a magnetic voice appeared in his cold voice as he spoke in an extremely serious manner. Of course, there are always unexpected things in the world. The future is always changing, and accidents happen from time to time. In order for you to live well, I've decided to lend you my power temporarily. Ripples appeared in the scarlet eyes, and the dark surroundings became even colder. The evil suppression of the kaleidoscope became even stronger. Do you mean your weird-shaped eyes? The little girl was obviously very intelligent. She blinked her eyes and asked curiously. Her watery eyes circled around Dustless's eyes. It was the first time she had seen such a strange pair of eyes. Even though she had read a lot of books, she had never heard of a devil fruit with such an ability. Indeed, I intend to store the ability of Mangekyo, as well as my own chakra, into your body in case I need it in the future. After all, you are the only one who can help me unravel the secret. Regardless of the little girl's resistance, his cold arm drooped on her soft little hand, and the evil but unusually strong warm energy fluctuations poured into her body. After a while, Dustless's eyes returned to their original black color, and when the weak little girl opened her eyes again, they were scarlet Sharingan. Remember, don't try to use its power unless you have no other choice. The side effects of the kaleidoscope are great. Falling unconscious is the best case scenario, and in a serious case, it can even directly extract your vitality. Dustless said with a serious look, and his meticulous look showed that he was not joking. Forcibly using the kaleidoscope without the bloodline of the Uchiha clan will only increase the burden, especially in this young body, which may be directly swallowed up. The chakra that Dustless stored in her body was not enough to open such a powerful technique as Kansusunu. What a strong ability! Perceiving the extraordinariness of the eyes, the little girl exclaimed, and the dark space was as clear as day. The ability of the kaleidoscope is beyond imagination, what you see is just the tip of the iceberg. Dustless explained with a slight smile, and his mind fell into memories. When he first opened the kaleidoscope, his left eye gave birth to a technique called Divine Providence, which can give any ability of his own to others, provided that the target must be a living body. When he invaded the moon, it was because of the power of the eight-tailed glint fruit that he was able to sweep across the moon. Otherwise, many years ago, Wu Qin would have died and become a skeleton on the moon, forever remaining in the universe. This technique also has limitations, and when he gives the Mangekyo Sharingan to others, Dustless himself can no longer use the ability of the Sharingan. The chakra stored in your body is limited, and if you can avoid using the kaleidoscope, try not to use it. The little girl carefully sensed that there was an inexplicable fluctuation of energy in her body, and because her body is not strong enough, the amount of energy stored is limited. In short, the reason why Dustless temporarily transferred the ability of the Mangekyo Sharingan to her is that he wants her to save her life, and using the ability of the Mangekyo Sharingan to fight is far from reaching this level. Can the conditions you promised me really be fulfilled? Thinking of the conditions of helping Dustless, the little girl asked in a trembling voice. She also has conditions for working for Dustless. Of course, I am not shameless enough to deceive a teenage girl. Dustless replied confidently, with a calm appearance. He didn't put the conditions of the little girl in his eyes at all, and the confidence exuding from his gestures makes people involuntarily trust him. I can reverse the flow of time and bring people back to life. I am also a god and a devil. The conditions you put forward are just a trivial matter for me. The people who have passed away in the past will stand in front of you again. Dustless, who has thousands of abilities condensed in his body, for him, there is nothing he can't do, it's only whether he wants to or not. Chapter 476. Dustless, who has Rinnegan Sharingan, comes back from the dead is just a trivial matter for him. It is extremely simple, and it only consumes a little bit of spiritual power, which does not bother him. Perceiving the evil power in her pupils, the little girl nodded silently. She was sure that if it weren't for the suppression of the strange energy fluctuations in her body, she would have been eroded by this strong negative emotion in an instant. In the end, she would become a simple walking dead. This is Mariehua. You are still wanted by the government. I will secretly send someone to send you away. Restoring the previous indifference, Dustless said without any ripples. In his eyes, a chess piece is always a chess piece, and the hidden chess piece in front of him is just the kind that can't be lost. It is worth lending his power to her to save her life. Do I really just need to follow your plan? The little girl who was about to leave suddenly stopped and asked with some uncertainty. Thinking of Dustless's absurd plan, she couldn't help but feel strange. Now Dustless has planned all her life for the next 20 years. How can she not be surprised? Indeed, you only need to follow what I remind you to do, and everything else is fine. Dustless also handed her a den mushy in case of an emergency. The plan can't keep up with the changes. What will happen in the future? Will there be unexpected situations? All of this must be prepared in advance. One wave after another, and you dare to do it so absurdly, bastard. In the office of the Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral, a roar with monstrous anger resounded throughout the Marlins. Fleet Admiral Kong stared at the map angrily, and a piercing killing intent broke out. The location marked on the map was Impel Down. Just through the den mushy, the bad news of Impel Down being invaded alarmed the entire Marine Headquarters. There is no need to be angry. Sengoku has already taken a battleship, and I believe that soon, he will chase down the villains who invaded Impel Down. Senior Staff Officer Tsuru, on the other hand, was unusually calm. After so many years of ups and downs, she had already developed a calm mentality that would not change even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of her. Well, this old man is worried about Sengoku. Soon, this hot potato will be replaced by him. I can also eat shellfish calmly like Garp in the future. Marshal Kong looked at Lieutenant General Crane in annoyance. At the same time, he glanced at Garp, who was crazily eating the shellfish. He couldn't help but give him a thumbs up and secretly praised him for his wit. It was precisely because he had repeatedly refused to be promoted to Great General that he could leisurely slack off. Sengoku is an admiral of the Marine Headquarters and is destined to work hard. Nonsense, I'm worried that the prisoners in Impel Down will be released by those vicious invaders. With a gloomy expression, Vice Admiral Tsuru expressed the worry in her heart. Cold sweat dripped down from her old temples. The lowest level of Impel Down was where some legendary big pirates were locked. If it was released, the world would be thrown into chaos. At this moment, Impel Down had turned into a pile of rubble, and the fierce fighting had caused the surrounding ground to crack, irregular, and even showing signs of sinking. I really don't know what's so special about this guy. Master and Hawkeye actually value him so much. This idiot is simply his truest reflection. In the dark promenade, the Don Quixote pirates slowly moved forward, and the future leader of the Spade Army, Pika, carried a big black sack on his shoulder. The thing in the big sack was obviously vitality, and sometimes it struggled violently. Fuck, I'm the world's #1 scientist. You bastards put the world's #1 scientist in a sack. This is blasphemy. An angry voice came out of the sack, and the shrill scream made people's scalp numb. If you have the guts to untie the sea stone handcuffs on my body, I will let you know the true meaning of devil fruit combined with science. You better be a useful person. You spent so much effort. If you get a trash, I will let you have a taste of the bomb fruit's power. Looking around, the members of the Don Quixote pirates had scars of different sizes on their bodies, all caused by rescuing the so-called world's #1 scientist. Treble, you're too slow. A middle-aged man with pink feathers came out of the darkness, his face full of arrogance and gloominess. Looking closely, it was Doflamingo. Another person hiding in the darkness with a black sword on his back is naturally Hawkeye. It's all this brat's fault for being disobedient. We spent so much effort to find him, and now he wants to kill us. After that, Pika slammed the sack on the wall and then stepped on it a few times before he was satisfied. Caesar also took the opportunity to get out of the sack. He grinned and was about to curse, but after seeing Doflamingo and Hawkeye, these two terrifying people, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. His old face flushed red. The two big pirates in front of him are so powerful that he can't afford to offend them. Is this guy Caesar? Looking at the comedic Caesar, the corner of Doflamingo's eyes twitched. He originally thought Caesar was a gentle and cultured scientist, but reality was the opposite of what he thought. His face was pale, he was dressed in a prisoner's uniform, and there were strange horns on his head. Because of Pike's previous revenge, this kid's face was swollen like a clown, which was very funny. "It's time to go, it won't be long before the enemy invades." Waving his hand, the crowd simply left, and Hawkeye followed closely behind. Impel Down, which was a big fight before, was as quiet as a dead city. The ground was flowing with a mysterious purple venom that could corrode any substance that touched it. In the center of the venom, Magellan's bloody body was clearly visible, with knife wounds and dense holes in his chest. With only a weak breath left, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Hawkeye and Doflamingo teamed up and Magellan was certainly not their opponent. Chapter 477. As soon as Doflamingo and Hawkeye walked out of Impel Down, a harsh roar came from afar. Looking up, it was countless black cannonballs. As far as the eye could see, it was a group of marine battleships, and the admirals of Sengoku on the turret. "If we don't want to be recognized by him, we can only escape in chaos," Doflamingo's eyes flashed with determination as he said in a deep voice. "The implication is to release all the prisoners in Impel Down. Only in this way can they escape without being exposed. As for the prisoners in the end, they don't care about them." Hawkeye was silent, apparently agreeing with Doflamingo's approach, and only in this way can they escape. The Warring States of Buddha was a marine admiral in Roger's era, and his strength is unfathomable. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, 2 days passed quietly. On an island somewhere in the Grand Line, a thin figure stood in a ruined building, looking at the distant sea, and there were many chimpanzees around him grinning at the figure. How strange. To think that a bunch of beasts would dare to provoke me. Looking down at the big baboons below, Dustless's mouth flashed with a cold light, and his calm eyes flashed with a blazing fighting spirit. This island was destroyed by war a few years ago, and most of the people left the island to take refuge. Few people know about it, so Dustless also chose this place as a temporary stronghold. Soon, Hawkeye and Doflamingo will bring Caesar here. Mere beast, bring it on. The majestic fighting spirit spread out. Dustless knew that these big baboons have been learning human fighting skills for a long time, and their rich fighting experience is even more than that of humans. Oh. A group of big baboons apparently understood Dustless's provocation, and they immediately roared angrily and surrounded him in groups. Looking at the scale, there are no less than hundreds of them. And they seem to be here. Looking sideways, the sea in the distance suddenly had many small black spots. His pupils dilated, and the flag of the Don Quixote pirates entered Dustless's sight. Including a man jumping up and down, wearing spiral stripes. Is he Caesar? Sure enough, it's exactly as I guessed. Dustless was unusually calm. In the original work, Caesar was an unusually lively and active person. At the same time, a group of baboons holding all kinds of swords and spears also charged over. They were just inches away, and their sharp swords were about to cut Dustless's body into pieces. Originally, I wanted to use this to kill time. Looks like I have to stop here. He withdrew his gaze again, and a ripple appeared in his pitch-black pupils. Suddenly, a powerful airwave swept out of the calm sky, and an invisible energy wave swept out like a wave. The formless air wave turned into a physical attack, crushing the ground under Dustless's feet into powder. The eyes of the baboons that had leaped into the air immediately turned pale white. Their mouths full of sharp teeth spat out dark red blood as they fell to the ground. Extremely fragile. Expressionlessly looking at those big baboons who had fainted, Dustless's entire body glowed with golden light. Along with a piercing sound, he disappeared like a breeze. Just in the blink of an eye, Dustless fell on the ship of the Don Quixote pirates. Who is it? The ghostly appearance of Dustless stunned everyone. Seeing the mysterious enemy invading, the members of the Don Quixote pirates were about to join forces to capture Dustless, but Doflamingo waved his hand to stop them. "Don't act rashly, this is one of us." Releasing a cold murderous aura, Doflamingo said tiredly. Dustless frowned slightly, and his eyes quietly spread out, taking in the changes in everyone's expression. Whether it was Hawkeye or Doflamingo, they all showed a deep loss of fatigue. "It's just a kidnapping, why are you guys like this?" With a little curiosity, Dustless asked, whether it was Hawkeye or Doflamingo, as well as the crew, they had obviously experienced a great battle and were extremely tired. "Bastards, those damned bastards are biting the hand that feeds them. How dare they try to snatch the ship after we let them out? Outrageous." Caesar gnashed his teeth, and the murderous intent in his words could not wait to tear the prisoners of Impel Down into pieces. After about 15 minutes, after Hawkeye narrated the original story in detail, Wuchen understood the cause of the whole thing as if waking up from a dream. Pirates are always greedy and cruel. Doflamingo, who wanted to take advantage of the chaos, released all the prisoners in Impel Down. It happened that Marine Admiral Sengoku arrived in time and bombarded the entire Impel Down. The surrounding battleships were smashed, and a group of pirates fled to Doflamingo's pirate ship, and there was inevitable physical contact. "Those guys are really unscrupulous." Looking around at the broken pirate ship, Doflamingo said with murderous intent. Dustless glanced at him without a trace. Pirates were indeed cruel and unscrupulous, backstabbing people. As a pirate, Doflamingo was no exception. Gotcha! The whole ship burst and became shaky, and it was about to sink to the bottom of the sea. Most of the members of the Don Quixote pirates were ability users, and they looked at them with horror. Devil fruit ability users will die if they fall to the bottom of the sea. Am I, the world's top scientist, going to die in this unknown place? Caesar roared in a low voice, his face full of unwillingness. Just as everyone's heart was filled with despair, a majestic gravitational force suddenly descended. The slowly sinking ship strangely floated up and quickly flew towards the island. The initiator was Dustless, whose right eye turned into Tensigan. The gravity of Tensigan even reached the level of controlling the moon. Now this small ship is naturally not worth mentioning to Dustless. Recalling the conversation between Hawkeye and Doflamingo with Dustless before, everyone realized that the young man in front of them was the big boss behind the scenes. Chapter 478. The broken battleship slowly landed, and everyone's tense heart relaxed. The sea rejected the devil fruit ability and sank to the bottom of the sea. His line of sight spread out and almost the entire island's appearance was in his eyes. A destroyed mess of a country, the buildings were all destroyed, and there was no one around. It was a bit embarrassing to want to use this as a stronghold. The isolated island was silent, and even a place to sleep and live had to be built. His eyes narrowed slightly, his hands formed a seal, and the ground that was stable before suddenly trembled. As Dustless fell, the surrounding landscape suddenly changed dramatically. Mokutan, tree world descends. Green trees containing majestic vitality rose from the ground, and in a short time, they densely covered the entire earth, and the twisting green trees were like tens of thousands of pythons. Not only that, the forest also followed Dustless's will to change, and a giant building was built in an instant, majestic and spectacular like a work of God. The time wasted from beginning to end was no more than a few breaths. Even Doflamingo and Hawkeye, who had witnessed countless stormy waves, were stunned when they saw such a scene, and their pupils were slightly sluggish. Every time he makes a move, it's a shocking ability. Then his body suddenly ignored the existence of gravity and floated in front of Caesar like a cloud. Under the latter's stunned gaze, Dustless handed him the design of Pluto. Caesar was stunned when he saw this. Dustless, who was suspended in the void, looked down at him with extremely uncomfortable eyes, which made Caesar particularly uncomfortable. After immediately remembering the strength of the former, he took the design and looked at it carefully. This is the design of the ancient weapon, Pluto. After a while, Caesar's pupils dilated, and he exclaimed with an inconceivable astonishment, and his tone was unusually trembling. In less than a second, under everyone's speechless gazes, Caesar began to dance with his hands and feet, and began to talk crazily. I should be the world's #1 scientist to create an ultimate killing weapon like an ancient weapon, and Vegapunk, that eyesore, will also become a thing of the past. Doflamingo's mouth twitched when he saw this. His heart was in a haze. He suddenly felt that it was an insult to him to spend his painstaking plan on such a weirdo. With all the facilities in place, how long will it take? Dustless nodded and asked straightforwardly. Dustless had never doubted the authenticity of the design. Doflamingo was as cunning as a fox, so he should know the price of deceiving him. This is hard to say. Caesar's expression stiffened when he heard this. After carefully scanning the design drawing again, his brows wrinkled tightly. The size of Pluton's super battleship was almost larger than the island in front of him, and the materials used to build it were also of the highest quality. Even if such a design fell into the hands of pirates, it would be rare for them to build it. Under the condition that all the facilities are in place, it should be able to be completed in 10 to 15 years. Rolling his eyes, Caesar patted his chest and promised solemnly. Dustless heard this and there was a slight ripple in his eyes. He thought it would take at least 20 years to complete, but he didn't expect the time to be shortened by half. I advise you not to think about it, otherwise, this will be your end, Kaka. Doflamingo stared at Caesar fiercely. He didn't know when, but a round stone had appeared in his hand. As he suddenly launched his power, it directly turned into powdery dust. 10 to 15 years to build Pluton, he also felt that it was a bit of a fantasy. This is an ultimate weapon that can destroy the world, an ancient weapon, not a cabbage on the roadside. How can I, the world's top brain, talk nonsense? Seeing Doflamingo looking down on him, Caesar suddenly forgot the gap between their strengths and roared at him without showing any weakness. Scientific attainments are what Caesar values the most. However, the premise of all this is that all the facilities are complete, and they are all extremely sophisticated machines. Caesar's eyes fell on Dustless, and no matter how distorted his logical thinking ability was, he also knew that the guy in front of him was the boss of Doflamingo and Hawkeye. Hugging the big thigh is also hugging him. As for Doflamingo, he's cool. No problem, you can buy what you need. If you can't, I will send someone to get it from the government. Slowly nodding, Dustless whispered. Opening his mouth, he thought of other problems, and when he was about to tell Caesar other trivial things, the Den Mushy in his arms suddenly rang. Fleet Admiral Kong. The blue Den Mushy in his arms, Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise. As the honorary admiral of the Marine headquarters, Dustless also has a Den Mushy that can independently contact Fleet Admiral Kong. The only thing that puzzles him is that this is the first time Fleet Admiral has taken the initiative to contact him. His eyes narrowed, there must be something wrong. Cough. On the other side of the Den Mushy, there was a cough, and it sounded tired. Remembering that when Doflamingo and Hawkeye slipped away, they released all the prisoners in Impel Down. Dustless thought that Fleet Admiral Kong would take him as a laborer, but the content of the message made him stiff. Soon, I will retire from the position of Fleet Admiral, and I will be replaced by Sengoku. I hope you can come to Marlindo to participate in the promotion ceremony of Sengoku, and it is best to change from Honorary Admiral to Headquarters Admiral. Sengoku is about to be promoted to Fleet Admiral, which means that there will be a gap in the ranks of Marine Admirals. Z has retired behind the scenes, and Garp has repeatedly refused to be promoted. The situation is worrying. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head decisively. He was not interested in mixing with a group of old men all day long. The leisurely days of Mariehua were more suitable for him. There is no problem in participating in the promotion ceremony of Sengoku. As for the transfer, I have already made an appointment with Gorosei, 5 elder stars, so don't mention it again. Chapter 479. Hearing Dustless's rejection of his conditions, Fleet Admiral Kong's face was bitter. Although he had guessed it in advance, he couldn't help but feel disappointed. Think about it, if you don't want to be a Tenryumanji, who would want to be a Marine Admiral? It's a hard job. Don't you think about it, the treatment is good. Even though Dustless refused, Fleet Admiral Kong was still unwilling to accept it. Today's Marine is in a difficult situation. After Sengoku was promoted to Fleet Admiral, it means that Marine Headquarters has no admiral as a deterrent. Pirates all over the world are bound to move, and the Grand Line, which is quiet after Roger's death, is bound to fall into a new round of bloody rain because of the lack of admiral's deterrence. I don't want to say more. Resolutely shaking his head and rejecting Fleet Admiral Kong's proposal, Dustless's face was resolute and there was no room for retreat. He knows how insidious and cunning Fleet Admiral Kong is. There are actually deeper reasons for being an admiral of Marine Headquarters. Marines are all insidious and cunning. When he just said this proposal, Dustless vaguely guessed Fleet Admiral Kong's purpose. Since that is the case, I will wait for you at the promotion ceremony of the Warring States Kingdom. Marshal Kong raised his head and sighed. He was too lazy to waste his breath and said. When the words fell, he didn't wait for Dustless to respond and turned off the Den Den Mushi. As for the impel down incident a few days ago, it must have been suppressed by the Marine. The only thing missing was Caesar, the fish that escaped the net. Naive, 7 warlords of the sea, is not accidental but inevitable. It's useless to stop the government from establishing this pirate organization. What should appear will always appear. Trying to delay the gears of history will only be crushed. With a sneer on his mouth, Dustless thought of Fleet Admiral Kong's previous words. This is the decision of Gorosei, 5 elder stars. A Marine Fleet Admiral can't refute it. Now the situation of the whole world is obvious. The Marines' combat effectiveness has fallen to an unprecedented weak level. There is a serious lack of high-end combat effectiveness. After Sengoku was promoted to Fleet Admiral, there will be no admiral in the Marine. At that time, the consequences can be imagined. The silent pirates will riot again, and all kinds of skeleton flags will be planted all over the islands of the Grand Line. Do you want to borrow my power to help you suppress the pirates and prevent the appearance of the 7 warlords of the sea? Boring. Even if I really become a real admiral of the Marine, the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, will not stop the policy of barbarian to barbarian. Dustless's strength is beyond doubt, and he is definitely qualified to be an admiral, and he can also use this powerful combat power to suppress the arrogance of pirates all over the world. Fleet Admiral Kong can also use this to prevent the birth of the 7 warlords of the sea. Dustless's transfer to a genuine Marine Admiral not only fills the lack of high-end combat power, but also suppresses pirates all over the world. In addition to the Shichibukai plan, it is killing 3 birds with 1 stone. On the contrary, if Dustless does not become a genuine admiral and still lives behind the scenes, the 7 warlords of the sea is bound to come out. Only by using this abnormal force to fill the shortage of admiral and to deter the pirates of the Grand Line and even the world full of pirates will continue to be balanced. Dustless, who eats both black and white, can't wait for the Shichibukai to appear quickly. He is destined not to agree with Fleet Admiral Kong's idea. All in all, the 7 warlords of the sea, an evil force dressed in the cloak of justice, is an inevitable product of the chaotic times, and it can't be stopped, and under the power of the Marine can't change the reality at all. The will of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, is greater than everything. Although I sympathize with you, but, after all, our positions are different. Looking at the blue void in the distance, Dustless was filled with emotion. He understood the difficulties of the Marine, and if he was in their shoes, he couldn't agree with the Shichibukai plan. Former comrades have fallen under the swords and sticks of pirates, and now they have to abandon their old grievances and join forces with each other. The entire Marine can't accept such a ridiculous proposal. Can't accept it, but it doesn't mean that they can refuse. The Marine can't violate the meaning of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, from beginning to end, because they are only the surface face of the world government. Shaking his head, Dustless was just about to leave when he seemed to have thought of something. Waves of ripples suddenly swept out from the void behind him, and countless divine weapons flashed out from within. The azure blue void was instantly dyed golden. So many weapons, so many berries. Pirates are greedy, and the Don Quixote pirates were stunned. Their eyes were fixed on the various weapons floating in the sky, and they unconsciously swallowed their saliva. Even the top pirates like Doflamingo can't let go of the treasures in the sky. Strength is very important, and so is the glittering berries. If you want to develop, you can't leave this kind of thing stained with money. With a wave of his hand, the weapons floating in the sky fell to the ground and piled up into a mountain. If you don't have enough, you can buy it, you don't have to rob. Staring at Doflamingo, Dustless said faintly. Ever since he had the Gate of Babylon, this heaven-defying ability, money had changed from the original material to a concept. It takes an astronomical amount of money to buy all kinds of machinery and materials to build Pluton. According to Caesar's preliminary estimate, it will cost at least 10 billion berries, and this is only the initial investment. The Don Quixote pirates certainly can't afford it. It's a pity to exchange this kind of weapon for scrap metal. Hawkeye's calm pupils loosened. He thought his black knife was a peerless divine weapon. Among the divine weapons that Wu Chen casually took out, many of them were at the same level as the black knife, knight. And the most speechless thing is that these weapons comparable to the black blade, knight, will soon be exchanged for money. If you like it, you can help yourself. Looking at the restrained members of the Don Quixote pirates, Dustless lazily said, and then his body disappeared into the clouds. Chapter 480. The Marine headquarters was no different from the past, but it was more solemn. The promotion of the fleet admiral during the Sengoku period was not as prosperous as imagined. The outside world didn't even know the most basic news. It was extremely low-key, and only the soldiers of the Marine headquarters knew the inside story. The soldiers on guard stared with their eyes wide open. Today was the day when the fleet admiral was replaced. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the sharp sound of breaking the air suddenly resounded through the sky. The harsh sharp sound made the soldiers' ears stuffy. They subconsciously looked up and saw a straight beam of light coming from the distant sky. A strong wind blew head-on, and in just a short time, a young man in a white coat appeared out of thin air. Taking a closer look, it was Wu Chen who rushed over in a hurry. Who is it? A group of Marines glared and pointed their guns at the mysterious intruder. They stared at Dustless fiercely. On such an important day, someone dared to invade the Marine headquarters. They were about to pull the trigger in their hands when a tall figure stopped their actions. Vice Admiral Sakazuki, this guy is an intruder. A group of Marines looked at the sudden appearance of Vice Admiral Sakazuki, and the battle instantly value report. The news that the future Sakazuki, Akainu, will be promoted to an admiral of the Marine headquarters has spread. There are even rumors that Sakazuki, Akainu, already has the strength to be on par with an admiral, but his age and qualifications have not reached the level of an admiral. Put down the gun, or you will die. Looking at Dustless, Sakazuki said indifferently. The rolling hoarse voice did not have human emotions. It was no different from steel. The Marines who raised their guns looked at each other and put down their guns. Please. Turning sideways, Sakazuki made an inviting gesture to Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless nodded silently and walked away under the stunned gaze of the Marines. The dark-skinned Akainu with a hat followed closely behind. Only a group of petrified Marines were left, staring at each other. In the heavily guarded corridor, Marines could be seen standing guard only a few meters apart. They looked meticulous, and at first glance, they were the elites of the elites. Sakazuki, Akainu, raised its eyes and looked at Dustless, who was alone in front of it. The surprise and confusion in its eyes were clearly visible. The highest level meeting of the Navy, even if he is a celestial dragon, it has nothing to do with him. After thinking about it, Sakazuki didn't guess the purpose of Dustless. Usually, when the Tenryubito is beaten, the Marine Admiral will come out. Dustless was not beaten, but he came to the Marine headquarters without being beaten. He was really puzzled. In particular, the current meeting was extraordinary. Even the Vice Admirals of the Marine may not be eligible to participate. If it wasn't for Fleet Admiral Sengoku to make an exception and allow him, Kazan, and Borsellino to participate, I'm afraid they would be rejected. Dustless was an outsider, but he was an honored guest. No one could feel at ease. What's so strange about you, Sakazuki? Suddenly pausing, Dustless turned to look at Sakazuki, who was completely wrapped up, and asked with a smile, to be honest, I'm not interested in such a small meeting either. But since your marshal is begging me so humbly, I have no choice but to give him face. He's the general of the army after all. He may be a little cunning and shameless, but I still have to give him face. After that, Dustless pretended to shrug helplessly, as if he was very reluctant and forced. Sakazuki, the corner of his mouth twitched. Even if Sakazuki had a stone-like mentality, he was still annoyed by Dustless's words, but in the end, his burning red iron fist relaxed. The identity of the two, whether its strength, is the difference between heaven and earth. There is a dimensional gap. Inside the Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral office, Fleet Admiral Kong was leisurely sitting on the sofa, leisurely smoking, and even humming a rare song in his mouth. This comfortable appearance was like walking in the clouds. His whole body was light and very comfortable. On the other hand, Sengoku's face was gloomy. He was wearing the original Fleet Admiral Kong's uniform. Obviously, Sengoku has been promoted to Fleet Admiral, and the original Fleet Admiral Kong also went one step further and became the world government's Fleet Admiral. His status was second only to Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. You don't have to be angry, Sengoku, the Marine is actually in such a situation. In the name of absolute justice, to maintain the peace of the world seas, they are essentially the world government's dogs. Their orders can only be obeyed. Seeing Fleet Admiral Sengoku's pale face, the Chief Staff Officer Tsuru smiled bitterly and comforted him. Although it's unpleasant to hear, it's true. The Marine is just the government's surface face. As long as they can maintain the stability of the world, it doesn't matter if they lose this surface face. Creak. At this moment, the door of the conference room was gently pushed open, and Dustless and Sakazuki were exposed to everyone's sight. Staring at Sengoku, who was already wearing the Fleet Admiral uniform, Dustless's face showed an apologetic smile and whispered, I'm sorry, there were some unexpected accidents on the road, delayed the journey, and I'm late. After that, Dustless put on an I've tried my best expression, causing everyone to roll their eyes. Even an idiot could see that he was deliberately stalling for time, waiting for Sengoku to become the Fleet Admiral before he arrived. Sengoku was too lazy to talk nonsense. To be honest, he felt strange that Dustless could arrive in person. Then he nodded towards Dustless and pointed to the remaining position on the sofa, motioning Dustless to sit there. Seeing everyone seated, Sengoku ordered his assistant to hand each of the documents on the table, and then drank the boiling tea in the cup, as if this was the only way to suppress the anger in his heart. No wonder Sengoku is so secretive. After carefully browsing the contents of the document, Dustless knew why Sengoku's face was so ugly. These people's courage is really extraordinary, and their practice is really provocative, which is tantamount to slapping the face of the new fleet admiral. Chapter 481. And they racked their brains to think of the most insulting way to Marine and replied to a letter to Fleet Admiral Sengoku. How can he not be angry? In this era, the Marine is synonymous with the cunning of a mouse. They were willing to wash their hands of the gold basin, but in the end, they were wiped out by the Marine's rogue. The number of pirates is uncountable. It's no wonder that Sengoku chose to make a big move, and he was beaten in the face. Even if he has been practicing for many years in the sea, there is still a burning pain. Spinning a cocoon, Dustless sat silently on the sofa, silent and speechless, putting on a look of indifference. He is just a so-called honorary admiral. He has no right to interfere. Of course, he is too lazy to ask more. The reason why he came to brush his sense of existence is to sell Sengoku and Fleet Admiral Sky's face. A group of villains who commit all kinds of crimes are so arrogant, hateful. Sengoku was so angry that he felt an unprecedented sense of grievance. He had already lowered his posture and hoped that some influential pirates would join the 7 warlords of the sea, but he didn't expect that the invited pirates would still be so arrogant. Not only did they kill the messenger he sent, but they also wrote a bunch of messy things that belittled and disgusted him as a Marine Fleet Admiral. Since that group of villains don't know what's good for them, there is no need to establish the so-called Shichibukai, this ridiculous force. It is better to send troops directly to annihilate them. Fleet Admiral Sengoku sneered again and again. Marine has lowered their body and face. Since they are not willing to join, Sengoku can only follow the general trend and send troops to crusade against those arrogant pirates. That's impossible, Sengoku. The 5 won't allow you to act recklessly according to your own will. The Shichibukai's matter is their acquiescence. General Kong's tone was sad, and he felt the same way. It's good to have a meteoric rise, but he is not a person who forgets his roots. The Marine created him, and Sky also created the Marine. He has a kind of love for the Marine from his soul. His most beloved soul was about to be stained, and his heart ached. A superior official can crush someone to death. Hearing Commander Kong's words, Sengoku raised his head and sighed. The loneliness in his tone made all the generals present silent. The only one who could remain indifferent was Dustless. He is not a real Marine, and he is not destined to integrate into this circle. The relationship between the world government and the Marine is not as harmonious and close as the world thinks. In fact, they are not as close as they seem to be, and they are always scheming against each other. Thinking about it, Dustless can't help but smile. I'm afraid that Sengoku and the entire Marine didn't expect that in the face of the temptation of the 7 warlords of the sea, the pirates still firmly refused, which was completely unexpected. To be qualified to plunder and avoid the pursuit of the Marine, such generous conditions are hard to come by. Sengoku and the Marine headquarters senior officials don't understand, but Dustless, as a bystander, knows the reason. In fact, it's very simple. The biggest problem is that the Marine can't be trusted at all. There are countless backstabbing incidents. Not to mention, pirates and the Marine are 2 opposite enemies after all. Only ghosts believe in the grand undertaking of abandoning the past. Idiots will also think of this as a trap for the Marine. The end of the road is not terrible, but if they are stabbed to death by their teammates, I'm afraid no one can get over it. And the Marine is the one who often does this kind of thing. There are countless pirates who believe that the Marine will eventually end up dead. There are many famous sayings in the Marine. Even if a pirate intends to repent, his sins can't be washed away by a moment of awakening. Therefore, when a pirate bows to the Marine, there are only 2 ways to go. The first is definitely to go to heaven and forever fall into the arms of God. The second is to be imprisoned in the deep sea prison, impelled down, that kind of dark hell on earth where you will never bathe in the sun and absorb the fresh air. In fact, as long as someone is willing to help, the establishment of the Shichibukai is just a small matter. Just when everyone had a headache and was thinking hard, Admiral Kong suddenly smiled mysteriously. Hearing this, all the Marines were stunned and looked at him with slight expectation, so was Dustless. Admiral Kong came into view with his hands in front of him and the corners of his mouth were raised high. His slightly proud rough face combined with his old eyes looked very cunning. In the face of everyone's gaze, Admiral Kong was calm, but his eyes were faintly looking at Dustless. Why doesn't this old guy's temper change? This is not the way to pit people. Seeing this, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that this strong little old man asked him to come to the ceremony of Sengoku. It was not a good thing, so he deliberately delayed the time, but he didn't expect to be caught by this very deep old man. Dustless didn't have any other complicated purpose. He just wanted to watch the meeting silently as an observer. Who knows that in the end, he was pulled into the water by this old man. Looking at Admiral Kong who pretended to be stupid, Dustless faintly guessed his purpose. If it was him, he could indeed promote the Shichibukai plan to be temporarily established. The Marines present were the elites of the elites. They were both intelligent and brave. Even Garp, who had the most nerves, was actually a meticulous man. In an instant, he understood what Admiral Kong meant. What you said is true. Admiral Kong's words made Sengoku suddenly enlightened, and he secretly scolded him for his ignorance. Before he fell into a blind spot of thought, in fact, he could find another shortcut. Pirates can choose not to join the 7 warlords of the sea, but their own people can temporarily fill in. Juroko Mihawk, the man with the nickname Hawkeye, can be temporarily stuffed into this organization. Anyway, he is also a pirate, and he can make an example to the pirates of the world. Chapter 482. Dustless already knew that he couldn't stay out of it and he could no longer keep a low profile. Moreover, he is a Tenryuzu, and several people present know that. The 3 future generals have seen Dustless, and they must know his identity as a Tenryuzu. Marine, Hero, Garp, Sengoku and Air Commander, including Vice Admiral Tsuru, all know Dustless. Deliberate disguise will only increase the ridicule. Although Hawkeye will not question my orders, this involves his personal affairs. I can only say that I will try my best. His own choice has nothing to do with me. The void splashed with ripples, and Dustless's voice came out, giving an ambiguous answer. Hawkeye doesn't join the 7 warlords of the sea. It doesn't matter to Wu Qin, it's just up to him. Hearing this, Sengoku's lonely heart was barely at ease. As long as Wu Qin opened his mouth to help, it would be fine. He had just been appointed as the marshal, and there were twists and turns. Even if his nerves were made of iron, he could not bear it. The big pirates who received the invitation to become Shichibukai before, including Chinjo and other influential figures, adopted the same means. After slaughtering the Marines sent in the past, they racked their brains to ridicule him as the new fleet admiral. That Chinjo is really vengeful. I just dented his head and he still hates me. Garp's nerve was quite big, full of innocence. He just performed his duty as a righteous soldier, but he didn't expect to be hated by Chinjo. However, this innocent remark was met with a roar of anger from Sengoku. Garp, you bastard, if you were willing to be an admiral, none of this would have happened. Staring at the legendary hero, Sengoku's last roar turned into a long sigh and a wry smile. From the moment he joined the Marine, he and Garp were close teammates. While appreciating each other, they were also competitors. It wasn't until Garp refused to be promoted to admiral that all this stopped. Otherwise, it might not be him who became the fleet admiral. From the looks of it, Garp was the final victor. He was living his life happily. With the end of Garp's speech, the serious atmosphere in the office also relaxed. This was also what Sengoku was happy to see. Garp could play such a mysterious role every time, which could relieve the depression during the meeting. As for Dustless, everyone ignored him for a while. Green Pepper. I didn't expect him to be one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Dustless thought to himself with some surprise in his dark pupils. Cone Green Pepper was also one of the legendary great pirates. His strength was unfathomable, and his reputation was well known. His iron head technique had reached the acme of perfection. As the saying goes, people are afraid of fame and pigs are afraid of being fat. In the end, because of his fame, he finally met his strongest enemy, the hero of the Navy, Vice Admiral Garp. After a fierce battle between the two, his sharp head was caved in by Garp's iron fist. After that, Cone Green Pepper, who was lucky enough to escape, gradually went into seclusion and faded out of sight. Even so, his hatred for Garp was increasing day by day. He hated Garp day and night. How could Cone Green Pepper join the Marine, let alone become the so-called 7 warlords of the sea? Naturally, he refused the invitation of the Marine. There's this old guy. A huge monster came into Dustless's sight. He had a fiery hairstyle and looked like a devil. There were 2 horns on the forehead, sharp ears and teeth, and there were crisscross stitches from head to neck. His whole body was dressed in a bat suit, which looked nondescript. It was Gecko Moria. However, this old guy also refused the conditions of Sengoku. He was not interested in joining the so-called 7 warlords of the sea. He even cut off the shadow of the marine personnel sent by Sengoku. Thinking about it, Moria's new world was doing well. He had not yet fought with 100 Beast Kaido, and his strength was at its peak. There were countless members under the ship, and there was no need to get involved in the Shichibukai. What's more, pirates don't have a good impression of the Marine. It's the same reason that the Marine hates pirates. After careful confirmation, Dustless never found the name of Doflamingo. With his strength, it's not difficult for him to be qualified for the 7 warlords of the sea. Obviously, it's someone with a higher status than Sengoku. Naturally, it's the 5 people of the world government who can have such a method. As for Boa Hancock, who was originally invited, her name did not appear on the list. First, her current identity is Dustless's slave. Second, she did not do anything bad and is not a wanted criminal. However, the pirates who were invited this time refused the conditions of Sengoku. It seems that the corner of his mouth squirmed slightly. When Dustless was about to help Sengoku, a strange energy fluctuation suddenly came from his body, and the words on his mouth suddenly stopped. Through the special charm left on Princess Otoheim, he learned that one of the 3 ancient weapons in the future, Poseidon, has been born from Princess Otoheim's belly, and it's named Shirahoshi. With the birth of Shirahoshi, Dustless was barely relieved, and the corner of his mouth outlined a smile. He did not intend to stop the mother and son from living a quiet life. No one knows the conditions of Poseidon's awakening. That is, after a few years, waiting for Monchi D. Luffy to help Shirahoshi awaken Poseidon, Dustless will take one of the most powerful weapons in the world. The plan to build the super battleship, Pluto, is also being urgently started. At that time, Dustless will have 2 peerless weapons in his hands. As for where the legendary Heavenly King is hiding, there is no way to know, but according to Dustless's guess, Heavenly King should belong to a behemoth of an aircraft. Its own area is even more exaggerated than Pluto. Chapter 483. Dustless's thoughts turned back, and he suddenly thought of the extraordinarily beautiful and graceful woman. Princess Otoheim always had a sad look, which was reflected in the dark pupils of Dustless's pupils. If he remembered correctly, not long after, this kind, beautiful, and sentimental princess consort would pass away. Even if she dies, I will squeeze out her last value. With a cold smile on his face, Dustless secretly decided. He made up his mind that on the day of Princess Otoheim's death, he will rescue her from the cage without leaving a trace, so that Shirahoshi can be used again at a certain time when she awakens Sea King's ability in the future. Shirahoshi's birth has nothing to do with Dustless. Only through the card of Princess Otoheim, she will be dependent on him, so that he can better control this destructive Sea King in the future. Sea King's ability is very exaggerated. He can summon Sea Kings with a volume of more than 5,000 meters. In this world where the Sea Kings are rampant, there is no doubt that they are the absolute overlord. Even if it's a 5,000-meter insect, it will cause a landslide, not to mention the powerful Sea King. While Dustless was daydreaming, this boring meeting also came to an end. The content was quite simple. Since some big pirates are afraid of the government, they can only hire someone else. This is also the result of a helpless situation. The admirals of the marine headquarters are already extinct. Sakazuki, Akainu, Kozo, Akiji, and Borsellino, Kizaru, will soon become the new 3 admirals. The only flaw is that the current 3 admirals are not qualified enough. It will be difficult for them to be promoted to admiral. Some people with ulterior motives will inevitably fan the flames. The crowd left the conference room one after another, and in the blink of an eye, there were only a few people left. Dustless was about to leave quietly, but an unexpected figure suddenly pulled his thin arm. Looking back, it was Fleet Admiral Sengoku. "There's something I have to tell you clearly," Sengoku said with a serious look. Hearing this, Dustless nodded slightly. Just listening to Sengoku's heavy voice, he knew that it was not a trivial matter. Since Kaido escaped from the hands of the Marine again, he began to rapidly expand his base in the New World and attacked the Marine base unscrupulously, deliberately retaliating against the Marine. Sengoku said with a little tiredness. Now it's an eventful time. Bad news comes to his ears every day. General Kong also nodded cautiously. The reason why the warring states were reluctant to establish the 7 warlords of the sea, and now hope to establish it as soon as possible, was the biggest factor. Kaido, that tough guy, is now listed as the most powerful big pirates by the world, together with Whitebeard AI from the New World, Big U's mom, and Red Hair, that kid who came later. They are all given a collective title. Commander Kong's murderous intent was awe-inspiring as he became a great pirate. This was an indirect slap to the Marine's old face. However, the most intolerable thing was that arrogant title. "Is it the Yonko, 4 emperors?" Dustless asked tentatively, thinking of the famous emperor in the future. The Yonko, 4 emperors, are the super overlords of the second half of the Grand Line. The strength of each emperor is at the peak of perfection, and there are almost no pirates who can compete with them. Yes, a group of short-sighted pirates dare to crown themselves with such an arrogant title. Do they even put the Marine in their eyes? Commander Kong's eyes widened and he slammed the table. The meaning of the Yonko, 4 emperors, is self-evident. It is like an emperor overlooking the vast and endless sea. Where will the Marine's face go? Sengoku's old face is like a black pot, which is the fundamental reason why he changed his mind and hoped to establish the Shichibukai as soon as possible. Although he is very dissatisfied with these big pirates and even disgusted with them, it's still good to be able to use the barbarian strategy to suppress the so-called Yonko, 4 emperors. Otherwise, the advantage that the Marine has gained since the execution of Roger will be dissipated by the 4 local emperors, who have just ascended the throne, and they will fall into a disadvantage again. Dustless couldn't help but smile and despise Fleet Admiral Kong's words. If pirates really want to put the Marine in their eyes, there will be no pirates in the world. Good Yonko, 4 emperors, I'm afraid that the higher you stand, the worse you fall. Sengoku sneered. The corner of his eyes glanced at Sengoku without a trace. Dustless keenly smelled a touch of hostility from Sengoku's tone, and his heart sank. There is a saying that after the establishment of the Shichibukai, Sengoku will choose to kill one of the Yonko, for emperors, and even if it's not good, he will mix up the other party's teeth. So, what do you want me to do? It shouldn't be as simple as persuading Hawkeye to join the Shichibukai. Stretching his waist, Dustless asked with a yawn, deliberately making an impatient look, indicating that if the two have any questions, it's okay. Sengoku and Fleet Admiral Kong looked at each other, both had a difficult look, and then nodded silently. With a look, Sengoku walked to Dustless's ear, and immediately lowered his head and gossiped in Dustless's ear. His voice was as thin as a mosquito. Sengoku didn't say anything, but halfway through, Dustless's mouth twitched uncontrollably, and his face turned green. Are you kidding me? You want me to be a lab rat for the crazy scientist Vegapunk? You should go to Sabo Salino, Kizaru, for this kind of thing. I think he will be willing to sacrifice himself for the Marine. His spittle flew all over the sky and sprayed all over Sengoku's face. After Dustless kicked the door of the conference room into pieces, he rushed out of the door with a black line hanging on his head. Only Sengoku and Fleet Admiral Kong were left with a bitter smile on their faces. It is indeed impossible for Dustless, a dignified Tenryubito, to be a lab rat for Vegapunk. However, as Dustless said before he left, he can only take a step back. There is always Borsalino. Chapter 484. The warm sunlight enveloped the entire Mariehua, dispelling the darkness of the world. Even the most decadent celestial dragons stopped their daily torture of slaves at this moment and basked in the sun leisurely like Dustless. On the couch, Dustless closed his eyes lightly, his breathing was steady and light, and he fell into a trance. The world and the system always maintains a dreamlike void, and endless stars adorn the boundless sky. Whether it is day or night, they are as bright as stars and never extinguished. On the sparkling lake, two figures were suddenly reflected. One of them was Dustless, and the silver-haired woman chasing after him was naturally Kagaya Otsutsuki. Boy, you'd better let me out. The two figures were both suspended in the void, and the law of gravity didn't work on them at all. Kagaya's beautiful face was full of anger, and she had the urge to vomit blood. In this mysterious world, it was like a unique small domain, and she couldn't break out at all. She was locked in this narrow world like a prisoner. Sorry, I don't have this ability at the moment. Dustless shrugged his shoulders as much as he could, and he looked like he had tried his best. Suddenly visiting the system world, Dustless and Ulua were intimate, and by the way, he asked Ling, if there was any way to get them out of this cage-like world. However, Kagaya came directly to his door. Staring at Kagaya's livid face, Dustless did not hesitate to add fuel to the fire and said, going out is also a disaster to the world. Your state of madness is only related to being a canary in a cage. These words made Kagaya's face turn straight, and her killing intent was monstrous. Actually, if you can obediently obey my orders, I can let you out in the future. Dustless smiled seriously as he circled around Kagaya's delicate body. Her eyebrows wrinkled slightly, and she racked her brains but still couldn't get out of this closed world. Kagaya had to admit that if she wanted to break out of the prison and be reborn, she must use the power of Dustless. After thinking about it for a while, his voice became softer, less unattainable, and more approachable and gentle, which was rare. What are your conditions? Kagaya lowered her voice and asked. Clenching her fists tightly, chakra gathered in the center of her hands. Countless afterimages of her fists could be seen faintly in the sky, flickering and disappearing in the blink of an eye. It was obvious that she was threatening Dustless. It was a good idea, but Dustless was not a tactful person. Stroking his clean chin, Dustless said thoughtfully, although you and I are not husband and wife in name, we are already husband and wife in reality. As the saying goes, the husband sings and the wife follows. It's your duty to serve me. At the very least, you should serve me until I'm comfortable. In your dreams. You can only have my body, but not my heart. Gritting her teeth, Huey sneered, or are you saying that you're such a useless man that you can only use such despicable methods to threaten me? Huey G's impression of Dustless could only be described with one word, terrible. Using despicable methods to seize her most important thing, despicable to the extreme. What annoyed Huey G the most was that this brat was too shameless. All kinds of unbearable methods, Dustless was used to it. Your heart. Dustless showed a surprised expression for the first time, and then said jokingly, your heart. This kind of luxury is too small for me, so I don't need it. Compared to your body, I prefer the latter. So, I just want your body. As for your heart, it's dispensable. As soon as the words fell, what hit back at Dustless was a sky full of fished shadows. The sky was filled with countless fists that could blow up mountains. At this moment, Huey G was completely infuriated by Dustless. The goddess of a generation was ridiculed by a mortal again and again. Although this mortal could be on par with her, or even surpass her, Huey G's chest was filled with blazing flames. And it burst out uncontrollably. The fist shadows condensed in the void turned from nothingness to reality. The power was infinite, and it turned into an earth-shattering crush. Dustless, who was alone, was particularly weak and powerless. 80 God's air attack. Seeing this, Dustless shook his head with a wry smile. This scene again. Sure enough, it's just as I guessed. It's impossible for me to develop feelings over time. I'll talk about it in the future. This kind of violent and direct method is more suitable for me. The ability of the glistening fruit was activated, and a gorgeous luster appeared all over his body. Dustless was about to use elementalization to ignore this destructive fist. Suddenly, a light flashed in his mind, and the elementalization was stopped. This is a good opportunity to take the opportunity to see how powerful that is. With a smile on his face, Dustless looked forward to it. She thought that Dustless would activate his ability to be immune to the 80 God's air attack, but now it seemed that was not the case. Of course, she would not think that Dustless suddenly realized that he owed her too much and chose to die under her hands. Her small white hand gently tapped the void, and a strange weapon with an unknown depth appeared out of thin air and landed on Dustless's body. This mysterious unknown weapon froze the void. What an evil thing. Looking at the strange weapon in Dustless's hand cautiously, Huey G smelled danger. This is the ability I recently obtained. This thing is called the Parting Sword, staring at the strongest sword in the Gate of Babylon, in his hand, and then calmly looking at the fished shadows whistling over, a cold light flashed in his eyes, and the parting sword in his hand also whistled down. Whoosh! A scarlet storm suddenly shot out, easily crushing the void. It was unstoppable like a tiger out of the cage. The moment it came into contact with the thousands of fists, the two disappeared between heaven and earth. It was just that the remaining power fluctuations were terrifying. The void was torn apart again when it was repaired. Such a cycle, the scene was very shocking. When you can really accept me, I will let you out. With that, Dustless's body disappeared from the system space forever, leaving only Huey G who was watching the void explode. Mariewa, Dustless, who was lying on the couch, opened his eyes. Behind him, a figure had been waiting for a long time. What is your choice, Hawkeye? Chapter 485. Hawkeye's sharp amber eyes stared at the void in front of him. Hawkeye's aura was calm, and he was always wearing the same black cloak. The black sword, Knight, on his back was his everything. In the face of Wu Chen's inquiry, the young eagle's eyes flashed with shrewd determination. His whole person was like a peerless divine sword, and the sharp edge of the sword was unstoppable. Even the air that slipped away from his body was cut off by Hawkeye. That majestic sword essence made people have a whole new level of respect for him. I haven't seen you for a while, and your kendo attainments have improved again. You are really a shocking monster. 10 of me added together can't be compared to you. Wu Qin said unwillingly as he turned his head to look at Hawkeye, who had cut through the 9 heavens with his sword. Hawkeye was an amazing genius. He was almost invulnerable in all aspects. Swordsmanship, hockey, and even science, which he wasn't good at, he could come up with refreshing suggestions. No matter what, he was an expert in every aspect. He was an outstanding existence. Dustless also has a feeling of admitting defeat. Compared to his original brother Uchiha Itachi, he is also a perfect existence. His strength and wisdom are enviable. I hope you won't choose the same path as Itachi. Dustless closed his eyes again. Your kendo attainments are indeed not as good as mine. Hawkeye accepted Wu Chen's praise. At the same time, his calm eyes stared at Wu Chen. He lost his usual calmness and faintly had a blazing battle intent. He said, just as you said before, if we talk about overall strength, even 10 of me together are not your opponent. Hawkeye analyzed rationally. As a swordsman, he can indeed crush Dustless, but if we talk about comprehensive strength, Dustless can use overwhelming strength to defeat him. The dark blue giant, nearly 200 meters high, to this day, he still can't forget the power of destroying the world. Just a casual wind is enough to rewrite the map plate. Not only Hawkeye, but the world has never seen it. Therefore, Hawkeye is also willing to be loyal to Dustless and follow Dustless's footsteps step by step to the top of the world. What do you think, my hawk? Dustless asked lazily with his eyes still closed. He has already faintly guessed his choice. Apart from Dustless, whose strength is unfathomable, Hawkeye's biggest enemy is Red Hair Shanks, who already has the name of Yonko, for emperors. He is one of the great pirates who overlooks all living beings in the second half of the Grand Line. Red Hair Shanks was famous all over the world. As his old enemy, Hawkeye wouldn't choose to hide and bury himself in the dust for the rest of his life. I didn't expect the world government to set up an organization like a Shichibukai. However, it is barely an honor to be chosen. In this case, I will take one of the seats in this organization. Hearing this, Dustless opened his eyes, showing a sharp gaze, looking at Hawkeye who is obviously taller than himself, and suddenly understood his purpose. So that's how it is. It seems that you are going to compete with Red Hair, and challenge Red Hair as one of the Yonko, for emperors. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head and said that he understood. Pirates are chasing fame and fortune. Although Hawkeye doesn't care about the pure material source of profit, he still has his own pursuit of fame. The position of the world's greatest swordsman must be real, not just strength, but the title is no exception. The title of Shichibukai is a disguised recognition. Red Hair Shanks, his former enemy and friend, has become a Yonko, for emperors, above countless pirates. Hawkeye, who doesn't think he is worse than Red Hair, is not willing to fall behind. Otherwise, it would be an insult to himself. Yonko, for emperors, Red Hair's old enemy Hawkeye is immortal. This evaluation is an insult to Hawkeye. Swordsmen are high-handed and attach great importance to dignity, especially Hawkeye, who particularly attaches great importance to self-esteem, is even more intolerable. A monk like Dustless who is unmoved by the mortal world is unique. I will inform Sengoku that you are willing to become a Shichibukai. Slightly nodding, Dustless also respects Hawkeye's choice. His eyes suddenly became deep, penetrating the endless space. It seems that he has seen the scene on an island where Hawkeye and Red Hair's sword competition became a legend. Glancing at Hawkeye without a trace, Dustless whispered, I am afraid that Sengoku will be too excited to sleep. Hawkeye, a pirate who currently has the strength of an admiral, can become a Shichibukai and temporarily work for the Marine. The impact and harvest are absolutely unparalleled. The power of an example is infinite. Speaking of which, Doflamingo's purpose doesn't seem simple. Suddenly he remembered that a few days ago, he accidentally used observation hockey and heard the conversation between Caesar and Doflamingo, and he chose to say it out loud. I knew that his purpose was not simple when he joined us. As long as it doesn't interfere with the construction of Pluton, let them come and go. Dustless doesn't care. According to his guess, it is likely to be something about the artificial devil fruit. As long as it doesn't interfere with the construction of Pluton, it doesn't matter. Dustless, Sama. In the dark room, White Zetsu drilled out of the ground with a piece of paper in his hand, with dense text and a portrait on it. Hawkeye was curious about White Zetsu's body structure at first. Finally, with the passage of time, he has become accustomed to it. It is normal for strange things to happen around Dustless. With a flick of his thumb, the information in White Zetsu's hand floated to Dustless. What came into view was an ugly man. His skin was rough, a few of his teeth were missing, and he had a big beer belly. Just from his appearance alone, one could tell that he was an idiot. This person is the man who will take everything from Whitebeard when he falls in the future, Blackbeard. He is actually a very deep and despicable villain. The world is changeable. Now your wisdom is so outstanding, but you even dare to reach out and touch this kind of thing. When the five know about it, whether Whitebeard can protect you will be a question mark. Chapter 486. Blackbeard was cunning, despicable, and ungrateful. Whitebeard's father, who had treated him well for decades, could easily betray him. He even gathered the members of the ship to hurt Whitebeard. His means were unheard of and unseen. It was also undeniable that Blackbeard was also a brave and resourceful person. He could be said to be a top-notch expert who took care of everything. Whether it was accidental or inevitable that Whitebeard died in his hands, it showed that Blackbeard was a rare and ambitious person. Killing his father who had supported him for many years sounds crazy, but in fact, this kind of thing happens from time to time. The character of a pirate is so despicable and ugly. For these black sheep, as long as it is for absolute interests, the ethics of the world are not worth mentioning to them. The essence of the existence of a pirate is to subvert the traditional concept of human nature. This man called Blackbeard is not simple. His amber eyes narrowed, shooting out a cold gaze. Staring at the document in Dustless's hand, Hawkeye seemed to think of something and suddenly opened his mouth. The caution in his tone was obvious. He faintly remembered the grievances between Red Hair Shanks and Blackbeard. Hearing this, Dustless suddenly nodded. After Hawkeye said so, Dustless remembered this. Once upon a time, Red Hair Shanks and Blackbeard had a grudge, and both sides fought fiercely. Red Hair Shanks knocked out several of Blackbeard's teeth, and Blackbeard left 3 scars on Red Hair's eyes. To some extent, Red Hair was even slightly inferior. He is very strong. He is still hiding in Whitebeard's fleet. There must be a secret. Hawkeye was sure, although it was a guess, he was very sure. How can a man whose strength is enough to be on par with Red Hair live under the protection of Whitebeard? Yes. Dustless nodded silently and then handed the document in his hand to Hawkeye. The content recorded in it was enough to shock the world, and the initiator was Blackbeard. He was an extremely cunning and despicable person, but at the same time, his thoughts were exceptionally meticulous. He looked neither brave nor astute, especially with that comical and ugly appearance. The first impression he gave people was that he belonged to the idiot type, but in reality, he was as cunning as a fox. Dustless still clearly remembers that the future war was caused by Blackbeard. The final winner was neither the Marine who successfully hit Whitebeard and killed Ace, nor the pirate side. The biggest winner was Blackbeard, the hidden dark horse. Everything was as he planned. While successfully obtaining the dark fruit, he used his abnormal ability and strange body structure to successfully steal Whitebeard's tremor fruit, Gura no Mi. It's amazing. How dare he touch this kind of thing? Hawkeye read the contents of the document carefully. What Blackbeard wanted was the power rock, which was comparable to ancient weapons. Presumably, when the Yonko, for emperors, used the power rock to cause the volcano to shake, Blackbeard saw the power that was enough to blow up an island. With the power rock, his dreams and ambitions have gone further. Pirates are greedy, unifying the world, chasing the other side of the dream. This kind of unrealistic dream, ambitious people like Blackbeard also have it. Compared with those pirates who talk big, Blackbeard pays more attention to practical actions. It's impossible for him to touch the power rock with his ability. The power rock is not cabbage on the roadside. On that island, the world government has a large number of elites stationed there. Dustless softly agreed. When the power rock reaches a certain level, it is enough to destroy the world. There must be powerful people in the world government or the marine. Some things can be done as long as you stop dreaming. It's just a moth to the flame. The only thing that Dustless is curious about is the use of the power rock. He shouldn't be as crazy as Z, planning to destroy the entire sea with it. Boo-hoo, just as Dustless was daydreaming, the phone in his arms suddenly rang. He frowned slightly and immediately took out the white special Den Mushi, which he often used to communicate with Sengoku. What is his choice, yes or no? Before Dustless could speak, Sengoku's slightly expectant voice came in advance. Dustless glanced at Hawkeye when he heard the words. After the latter nodded resolutely, he whispered, Hawkeye has agreed to join the Shichibukai force. Huh, Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief and his heart was like a stone sinking into the sea. He was happy and was about to praise Dustless when the latter's words made him almost fall off the sofa. Blackbeard, that is, a member of the pirates under Whitebeard, seems to have reached the power rock. The content from the other side of the Den Mushi made Sengoku's mind as if it was burnt and blank. As a Marine Fleet Admiral, how could he not know the danger of the power rock? The Marine headquarters was affected by the explosion of the power rock, and it was a big question mark whether it could exist. Is the news reliable? Also, how could a mere crew member know a secret that Whitebeard may not know? Sengoku's relaxed heart tightened again, and he doubted. The power rock is a secret weapon, and the government and the Marine have done excellent confidentiality measures. It is only limited to the internal high-level understanding. Now that an ordinary pirate under Whitebeard knows about it, how can Sengoku not be surprised? I don't know the specific content. I can only tell you that his name is Marshal D. Tich. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, who was far away in the Marine headquarters, heard the word D, and his face suddenly became gloomy. Outsiders don't understand the meaning of D, but as a Marine headquarters Fleet Admiral, Sengoku knows what it means. In general, a person with D in his name is a person who can create miracles infinitely. This can also be used well to teach Whitebeard's pirates a lesson. Sengoku's mind suddenly flashed and he smiled. Chapter 487. Pirates and Marines are natural enemies of each other. Both sides are completely irreconcilable. Now he can find an opportunity to plot against Whitebeard. The new fleet admiral known as the Wise Admiral will certainly not let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Whitebeard is a righteous person, and his heroism is known to the world. As a pirate full of evil, he attaches great importance to friendship. This is his most successful and charming side. But to some extent, this is also Whitebeard's biggest failure. Sengoku, are you going to catch Blackbeard, Marshal D. Tich, to threaten Whitebeard? Dustless guessed Sengoku's purpose at a glance, and asked. From Whitebeard's point of view, if his son is captured by Marine, it is indeed possible for him to save him. There is a saying that the plan can't keep up with the changes. The idea is good, but Dustless thinks it is impossible. If Blackbeard is an ordinary pirate, it is not difficult to catch him. The key is that he is not the kind of roadside goods. If he dares to touch Li Yan's idea, it means that he has made full preparations. It is not impossible to steal a chicken and lose the rice. Blackbeard is also a poisonous snake full of thorns. Maybe he can't catch him, but he will get into trouble. It's true that catching Blackbeard to threaten Whitebeard is a despicable method, but there is no need to talk about so-called morality with villains. Sengoku did not hide it. His impression of Dustless is quite good. This is not realistic. Blackbeard has not reached the level where he can threaten Whitebeard. Even if Blackbeard is caught and killed, I estimate that Whitebeard will suffer at most, or attack some marine bases. He can't gamble the future of Whitebeard pirates for Blackbeard alone. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head. Whitebeard attaches great importance to friendship. It is impossible to threaten him with cats and dogs. In the past naval battles, he has captured members of Whitebeard's pirate ship, but he has not seen Whitebeard attack Marines several times. Blackbeard is indeed not powerful enough to threaten Whitebeard. After some contemplation, Sengoku sighed and nodded decadently. The burning power in his body also calmed down. Actually, we don't have to capture Blackbeard. Dustless's hoarse voice came from the other end of the phone, with a hint of cold hostility. Sengoku's bad mood also became hot, and then he thought of Blackbeard's identity, which was not worth mentioning, and asked, that guy is just. Could it be? Suddenly, a light flashed in his mind. Sengoku sneered again and again. The world's understanding of the mysterious material of the power rock was minimal. Yes, that guy actually wants the power rock. I can set it as a time bomb in advance and let the idiot with D bring it back to the Whitebeard pirates. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, another few days had passed. Because the government can add fuel to the fire, the 7 warlords of the sea made the whole world boil in a short time and became the after-dinner gossip of the pirates of the major sea. On a sunny afternoon, on the sparkling surface of the sea, a huge ship slowly moved forward. The unique white flag was known to all. It was the world government's battleship. The world government is synonymous with holiness. Inside such a sacred and solemn world government ship, this time it was a different scene. A group of evil pirates talked and laughed, talking about their heroic deeds in the past with each other, and sometimes there would be laughter. Sengoku looked gloomily at several figures on the deck in the distance. The power gathered in his hand was enough to disintegrate the big ship under his feet in an instant, but he always kept silent. After a moment of contemplation, the powerful force that was ready to be unleashed collapsed. Today's Marine is in a dilemma. They can only rely on the strength of these pirates to deter the world. It's ridiculous that the Marine, who has always been known as absolute justice, has to rely on the power of pirates one day. Sengoku, when will you fulfill the condition of me joining the Shichibukai? A powerful low voice came, with a little eagerness. You'd better not deceive me, otherwise, everyone will die. Looking at the place where the voice sounded, a blue-skinned fishman suddenly came into view. Looking closely, it was Jinbe, who is now known as Knight of the Sea. When Dustless caught Boa Hancock, he didn't find this guy. The fishman has an unparalleled advantage in the sea. Even Dustless can only look and sigh. After escaping, Jinbe returned to the Fishman Island. Dustless's overwhelming strength was vivid in his mind. He was crushed like an ant and deeply stimulated. In the following days, Jinbe carried out crazy self-training and his strength was qualitatively improved. Later, he went to the New World and became famous for a time. Then he was invited by the world government to join the emerging pirate organization Shichibukai. At first, Jinbi didn't think about it and simply refused. His big brother Jinbi and a group of fisherman brothers were caught by the world government. How could he join this organization and collude with the world government? But then the government promised that the condition of becoming a Shichibukai was that he could bail out all the imprisoned Murlocs except Tiger. Thinking about it carefully, Jinbi also joined this organization. The conditions made by the Marine will naturally be fulfilled. Don't compare the righteous Marine with your evil pirates. Sengoku looked at Jinbi impatiently, the disgust in his eyes was obvious. Even if these pirates promised to be loyal to the Marine for the time being, he couldn't be happy. Even if Jinbi was a pirate with a conscience, he was still a pirate from beginning to end. After becoming a Shichibukai, their past sins couldn't be washed away, and with the privileges they had after becoming a Shichibukai, their sins were deeper. Sengoku could only force himself to be in the same boat with these scum. Fortunately, Mariajoa was close at hand. Chapter 488. Staring at the magnificent holy land in front of him, Mariewa, Sengoku's turbid eyes flashed with disapproval. The golden afterglow sprinkled all over the world. Fleet Admiral Sengoku staggered, his dry mouth was a little dazed, his pupils were gray, and he fell into a reverie. The blood-red glow illuminated the entire Mariewa, and the refraction of the sparkling sea was particularly dazzling. Such a dazzling scene, Sengoku's eyes were surprisingly big. In the dark, he seemed to see the wailing of the world government, and the scene of the setting sun in front of him was the true portrayal of the future world government. As for the culprit who destroyed him, under the golden light, it was faintly discernible. His messy hair danced with the wind, and the messy weeds were blown by the wind. Although this was the case, there was an indescribable momentum in the invisible. His bright and wise eyes carry through the vicissitudes of life. It seems that as long as he wants to, the world in front of him, as well as all creatures, everything will change according to his will. There was always a faint elegant smile at the corner of his mouth, and his demeanor was always a little lazy, and he always maintained a weak appearance. For a while, his pupils were full of astonishment, staring at the hazy shadow in the distance. Sengoku subconsciously said to himself, "Was that Louis South Saint just now?" His aged eyes were covered with sparkling and translucent mist. He rubbed his eyes as if he was possessed by gods and demons. The scene in front of him was very different. It was still the magnificent Mariewa shrouded in the light, and the figure of Dushless that he saw had disappeared. Really, I'm already so old, and I'm sitting in the position of Marine Fleet Admiral, and I still have this ridiculous illusion. Time makes people grow old. Sengoku, who returned to his senses, smiled bitterly and sighed. Dustless, as a member of the Celestial Dragons, was too late to maintain his own rule. How could he be stupid enough to overthrow the rule of the world government? It was completely out of line with the logical thinking of the development of things. That man. Are you talking about Louis South, Saint? Jinbi, if you have a revenge heart, I advise you to stop in advance. In my heart, you have more conscience than those evil pirates. Don't ruin your image. Only an idiot like Crocodile can do such a thing. Looking at Jinbi with deep meaning, Fleet Admiral Sengoku said bluntly. On the front deck of the battleship, Crocodile's figure was clearly visible, bragging about his past. Of course, it was undeniable that this kid was young and had some strength. In Sengoku's eyes, this man was indeed hopeless. He challenged Whitebeard in the New World and was crushed by the strongest man in the world. It's better to escape safe and sound. The stray dog that escaped from Whitebeard's hand has now become a Shichibukai, which makes Sengoku feel that fate is changeable. Of course, the government also needed people who hated Whitebeard or the other 3 emperors. If they really had to deal with the 4 emperors in the future, it would be better for them to band together. I accept your kindness. Goodbye. Jinbe nodded and did not refute Sengoku's words. It was a fact and he just returned to the cabin. The scene of Dustless destroying and crushing him, Jinbe will never be relieved. That cruel scene has taken root and sprouted in his heart, and his thoughts are deeply rooted, like a brand that will never be extinguished. The enemy is in front of me. I can only endure. In the cabin, Jinbe clenched his huge fist unwillingly. Thinking of the situation of the Fishman Island, he had no choice but to loosen his fist. Princess Odoheim brought the Tenryubito Louis South Saint to sign the agreement. Now she is urging the people to sign their names. Jinbe was in a dilemma. There was righteousness in front of him, and there was loyalty and righteousness behind him. He was once taken care of by Princess Odoheim. At this time, he naturally couldn't tear down the stage. I can only take one step at a time. Staring at Mariewa, who was getting closer and closer, Jinbe forced himself to be rational. The world government was no less dangerous than a wolf's den. If he was not careful, he would be torn to pieces by the pack of hungry wolves, and not even his bones would be left. They're finally here. It's not easy for the 5 old men to make such a big fuss over a group of pirates. Thinking of what Gorisei, 5 elder stars, did in the past few days, Dustless couldn't help but smile. About half an hour later, it was close to evening and the battleship had been docked. Dustless's expression converged and he also turned into a breeze and disappeared. The pirates who were invited to become Shichibukai also got off the ship and looked at the peaceful Mariewa with a proud look. There is no more glory and irony than landing on the world government's base camp as a pirate. The pirates who came down from the battleship were Sand Crocodile, and Knight of the Sea, Jinbe. Such a miserable reality is beyond imagination. The Shichibukai, that was supposed to be composed of 7 people plus Hawkeye, was only 3 people. Now it has become Sanbukai. Including the Marine Fleet Admiral Sengoku and the Commander-in-Chief of the entire army, who is still his immediate superior, Sky. Dustless's figure on the shore is clearly visible. Aware of the existence of Dustless, Sengoku and Fleet Admiral Sky also smiled. Dustless's identity is a Tenryubito and his status is higher than the 5 people of the world government. It is out of friendship that he can meet Sky and Sengoku. After looking around at Crocodile, who is about to join the Shichibukai, and Jinbe, Dustless nodded. At this moment, an unexpectedly strong and tall figure suddenly stepped down from the battleship. As he walked, he trembled and swayed from side to side. It was a little funny, but no one, including Wu Qin, dared to look down on him. Staring at the figure that suddenly appeared, Dustless's pupils dilated. He didn't remember that the monster in front of him joined the Shichibukai organization at this time. Chapter 489. His body is burly, his shape is similar to that of a big bear, and his height is also huge. When he walks from side to side, he even has a strange illusion. With a height of nearly 7 meters, he looks like a shaking hill. Every time his footsteps land, there will be a slight vibration on the ground. Bear's momentum is extremely terrible and gloomy. Thinking of his past coldness, anyone who faces him will be terrified. Combined with this majestic body, it is full of deterrence. Bartholomew Bear. This guy will enter Shichibukai later. The current members of Shichibukai have nothing to do with him. The sudden change made Dustless's eyebrows solidify, and an absurd idea quietly rose in Dustless's mind. Did he find out that I controlled Dorag? The only reason Dustless can think of is this, which may be the fundamental reason why Bartholomew Bear joined Shichibukai. Impossible, this kid can't find out that I tampered with Dragon's memory at his level. Slightly, Dustless still shook his head, he still has doubts about this. Using Tensigin to modify Dorag's memory is completely undetectable. Even if Bear's means are powerful, he can't detect it. He doesn't have the ability to know it all. In particular, Dustless did not make much change in Dorag's memory. He just changed his life goal to focus on ancient weapons, and his daily life and personality are the original him. While he was deep in thought, a gust of wind and sand suddenly floated in the void. Immediately, a sharp golden hook suddenly appeared behind Wuchen's head. The cold light flickered, and the cold murderous aura made the whole scene suddenly solidified. Crocodile, do you want to die, you bastard? Don't forget where you are. Seeing Crocodile's sudden attack, Sengoku's face was blue. These pirates were really shameless. When they were on the ship, they had already agreed to 3 rules. These big pirates also made guarantees that they would never do stupid things like taking advantage of the situation. Shrouded in a bright golden light, Sengoku did not hesitate to launch his fruit ability. When he tried to stop Crocodile, it was already too late. In such a short distance, Crocodile took the opportunity to attack. Sengoku could not deal with it. He could only watch the sharp iron hook sweep toward Dustless's neck. The person who can make Sengoku and Kazuko bow their heads should not be a fish in the pool. Hello, it's the first time we meet. My name is Crocodile. This is my gift. Seeing that Dustless's body was about to be separated, Crocodile laughed with a cigar in his mouth. Even if this is Mariewa, it can't stop him from killing people. As a pirate, he should be casual and not be bound by the mortal world's commandments. Letting nature take its course is only respected by the weak. Clang! A loud and clear sound rang out, and a faint ripple appeared in the air. Then, the sharp iron hook made of pure gold was tightly grasped by a pitch-black hand. Crocodile. Sorry, I'm not too familiar with your name. The unchanging voice fell into everyone's ears, and the unprecedented calmness made everyone's face change slightly. Crocodile is not immortal. Even if his bounty is only the ordinary goods of 81 million berries, his real strength is far beyond his bounty. The new world challenged Whitebeard. Although he lost miserably, the person who could escape from Whitebeard's hands safe and sound explained everything. Don't push your luck. With a black face, Crocodile said hoarsely, and the suppressed hissing coincides with the real Crocodile. Dustless's indifference is the best provocation to him. Crocodile has had this expression before. The only difference is that he is facing a small character who is not worth mentioning. He still vaguely remembers that Whitebeard also had this kind of expression at the beginning, and he couldn't help but think of the scars of the past. As a scar man, Dustless makes Crocodile's heart ache. This indifferent expression was like a sharp thorn that pierced his heart and dignity. Armament hockey is a good practice, but life and death is also your own fault. Staring at Dustless's black hand holding the golden barb, Crocodile's tone has a little more appreciation. It is not difficult to see that he is young and his attainments in armament hockey are quite deep. As Crocodile's voice fell, the tip of the golden barb suddenly overflowed with a few drops of mysterious purple venom. This strange venom ignored the steel skin of armament hockey and rushed into Dustless's meridians and blood vessels. So that's how it is. Is this your trump card? Aware of the abnormality in the blood vessels, Dustless nodded slightly. This crocodile is also a peerless hero. He can prepare for everything and knows what it means to prepare for a rainy day. Perhaps it is because of his meticulous mind that he challenged Whitebeard and was able to survive. But what do you think venom can change? Boom! The fist wrapped with armament hockey slammed and the golden barb in his hand burst in an instant and turned into small particles like sand. At the same time, the mysterious purple venom that had penetrated Dustless's skin suddenly began to attack, corroding and destroying every inch of his meridians and blood vessels. You have a sharp tongue. When you beg me, I will not give you the antidote. Seeing Dustless's frozen and unchanging face, Crocodile sneered coldly. It was this trick that he used to plot against Whitebeard, and he was able to escape from the world's strongest man. Staring at Dustless's arm, it can be clearly seen that the internal organization has been destroyed and there is no vitality. It has been completely hollowed out and destroyed. Even so, Dustless's relaxed expression remained unchanged from beginning to end, and even the corners of his mouth rose with a sarcastic and indifferent smile. Beg you to hand over the antidote? That's just your wishful thinking. This kind of small raindrops won't have any effect on me. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.